We're not here to play games, we're actually here to tell you all about Samsung Galaxy Unpacked, and it's been about these two showstoppers, the new Z Flip 4 and the Z Fold 4. Samsung foldable season's here, but how did we get here? Let's rewind.
Well, it looks like we've got mail on deck today, and you know what we do when we get a personalized box like this? We end up unboxing it. So let's do that.
Now, the first question that comes to mind when you look at these new launches is, how different are they from last year's launches? And just like the iPhone, there's very incremental changes when you've already made a good product. The Fold 3, the Fold 4 had a bunch of industry-first features like water resistance and, of course, flagship processors. This time, they've obviously updated to this year's version, but there are a few things that we liked and a few things that we were actually left wishing for, and that's what we're going to start with. So we're going to start off with the Fold 4 and the Fold 3. Just your initial impressions looking at it, I'll tell you 2 or 3 things that have really changed with this phone. Look at the camera sensors, and you can automatically tell that the Fold 4 has much bigger sensors, so hopefully that translates to better photography. Another thing about the phone that I have to mention is that the Fold 3 was a great device, but every time you tried opening it, it wasn't as easy to actually slip your finger in and open it. This is like a clamshell which is waiting to be opened. It's a lot more handleable and it's a lot easier to open. Coming back to the camera, this is a much improved, bigger sensor. Now the triple camera setup at the back has gotten a lot bigger and a lot better. So let me make it easier for you. There's a whole bunch of cameras, 3 here, 1 over here, and then of course the one on the inside display. Let's start off with this triple camera setup at the back. It's a 50 megapixel main sensor with OIS, a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor with a 123-degree field of view. Then there's a telephoto sensor with OIS as well, that's 10 megapixels. Now let's talk about the outer front camera. That's obviously when you shut the phone closed and you're using the external display. That's a 10 megapixel sensor and it's decent at selfies. The inner front camera is the one which last time we were not very pleased with. That's a 4 megapixel under display sensor. The display does a decent job. The minute you turn it on, gives you an option. Do you want to look natural or do you want to get much brighter? In TV, we want to look brighter very often, but let's go natural over here and have a look at how it goes. The minute you open it up, I mean, it's a striking display, so it does a good job at representing that. But then, of course, you open it up and then when you're using this camera, I know that there was a lot of talk about how this camera was not the best the last time around, but it's pretty much hidden even now. And if you take a photo, what I love about it is, look, it's not the best camera, but the fact that there's a lot of processing happening over here, you have an extra camera out there, is good enough for me. There's flex mode here, so much more multitasking is fascinating. And then, of course, you have the cameras at the back. In terms of the triple camera setup at the back, I've already turned it on. And if I want to take a nice photo of the Samsung Opera House, well, then here goes. And honestly, anything on this display looks really good. I'm going to actually compare this to the iPhone 13 Pro and perhaps the S22 Ultra from the Samsung stable. But I think what they are saying with this is interesting because they're saying that there will be better nightography or night photography. And with bigger sensors, it's just logical that they will have a lot more light coming in. It'll be a clearer picture. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out when we have a long-term, in-depth review of the Fold 4. Like last year, this year as well, the Z Fold 4 and the Flip 4 are powered by the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which is a flagship processor. It doesn't get better than that, top of the heap, and that is what comes with this as well, so you can expect some good performance. Of course, it comes with 12 gigs of RAM, and I think that's good enough for your multitasking capabilities, and there's a lot of them in terms of Samsung software that they've tried to introduce with this enhanced multitasking capabilities than even the last year's version. But when you're talking about foldables, the main thing you need to talk about if you're a tech geek is the displays, and this has a bunch of them. So it comes with a 7.6-inch QXGA Plus Dynamic AMOLED 2X display. That's this one, the main one on the inside. It supports 120 Hz of a refresh rate and can dynamically switch from 1 Hz to 120 Hz. That can really help it save some battery. But it's going to need a lot more battery because when you flip this phone close, you have a smaller outer screen. And frankly, it does the job most of the time. You don't even need to open it if you want to just use this as a quick calling or texting device. The smaller outer screen is a 6.2-inch HD Plus dynamic AMOLED panel, and again, it has a 120 Hz refresh rate, but it can only go down to 48 Hz. What that means is that it is not going to be able to save as much battery perhaps as the inner display, but I think this one does quite a decent job, and the fact that you have several 120 Hz displays on a phone when many manufacturers aren't even giving you 120 Hz, I think that is a very interesting piece of information. You know, I'm quite certain that the Fold 4 is much lighter than last year's model, and that makes a big difference. This is the only device that you've put in your pocket. It's quite large, and that's because it also doubles up as your multitasking device, maybe a tablet as well. I didn't use my mini tablet for the longest time when I was using the Fold 3. I think this is going to do just that yet again. So if it's lighter, it's even better. One thing which is evident with the Fold still is the crease, and well, I think as foldable tech gets better, this will become less evident. But if you're in a very bright scene, then of course, at some angles, this is quite evident, blatantly out there. But if you're watching the night, or if you're on an aircraft watching your favorite show, then most of the times you can't even spot it. Look, you're getting a foldable, and we need to get over not liking a crease when your glass is actually folding. It's good tech, and that's what we like at Tech Today. Now, since we're talking about the Fold 4, how could we ignore this strikingly Bora purple Flip 4? There's a lot you can do with this on flex mode, and Samsung's been talking about it even with the previous Flip. But the fact that you can use it as a vlogging device with the front camera, you can actually split the screen into two. Again, multitasking capabilities as well. That's all great. It comes with a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 flagship processor. And then the camera system is a double camera system at the back. So the rear camera is a 12 megapixel main camera with OIS and a second 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with a 123-degree field of view. There's also a 10 megapixel front camera, and that's what you can use for selfies and video calls. Maybe if that was a little better, it would be more interesting to make this a vlogging device, but a 10 megapixel camera perhaps will do the job as well. Look, something that Samsung's trying to work on with the Flex, and there was a lot of developers who tried doing it with the last model, is this external display. I think there's a lot more you can do with it. It's still limited in terms of functionality. If you're remembering the Moto Razr of old, then you can do basic things on this, but now you can also use this for portrait mode photography. And that's something we'll want to test extensively on Tech Today. So this is a tiny 1.9-inch Super AMOLED display, and I think this is quite useful yet again. When you open the phone, this foldable display is what I want to tell you about. The Flip 4 comes with a 6.7-inch FHD Plus dynamic AMOLED outer screen, and of course that has a 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate. There's a 3700 mAh battery, and of course you have a 25-watt wire charging, and there's wireless charging as well. Look, these are only our initial impressions of the Flip 4 and the Fold 4, two flagship premium foldable devices that we were very excited about, and you've seen them first on Tech Today. If you want to know about the India pricing, because that's not out yet, the international pricing is around the same as last year, but for the India pricing, you have to log on to the Business Today website.